The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is no substitute for professional care by your doctor or your qualified healthcare professional. Never disregard or delay professional medical advice because of something you've heard on this podcast or in any linked material. Guests who speak on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Shirley neither endorses nor opposes any particular opinion discussed on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, practice, institution, or other entity with which Dr. Shirley may be affiliated.
Welcome to Forever F.A.B, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty. This podcast is curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD, as the definitive source of holistic wellness through beauty.
This week's episode is dedicated to using creativity to usher in opportunity. The title of this episode is Pink is for Power, Purpose, and Pretty Clothes. This is my interview with Tiffany Walker. Tiffany Walker is a designer and founder of Pink Lucy, a fashion brand and store. Her designs conjure volume, flair, and big personality. Hailing from Shreveport, Louisiana, Tiffany herself has Southern charm that is infused into every garment that she creates. Her creativity stems from what she envisions that her fashion enables women to be: fearless, fierce, fashion forward, and of course, fabulous. She joins me via StreamYard today to discuss using her gifts to help make the world a better, more fabulous place. Welcome, Tiffany. Congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you
for becoming a beautiful member of the Forever F.A.B community. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really anxious to get into your story. So shall we get right into it?
Let's get into it.
Let's get it, girl. Let's get it. So what inspired your passion for fashion?
God, what inspired it? It's so many things, right? But more than anything, I had a love for art very early on. My mother and father both were in the fashion industry, so to speak. My mother was a fit model for Neiman Marcus. My father modeled professionally. He was actually signed with an agency. And my father was also an artist. So I grew up with very fashion forward, very lively parents that taught me early on that I wasn't to put myself inside of a box, that anything I wanted to pursue, anything I wanted to do, that was okay. And they were going to support that. So I was allowed to color outside of the lines, so to speak.
Yes.
Which was truly a blessing. And my father really, really taught me how to not see everything as just black and white, to see the gray areas as well, and open up my vision to color and all the different, in a way that really taught me that the world wasn't just cut and dry, that there's so much more. And being, raised by parents that were forward thinkers and that were so fabulous and had so much swagger and just all of that, just really helped me to see that it was okay for me to just be who I am. Like, I didn't have to box myself and be the status quo.
I love those lessons that you learned because, frankly, the only thing that should be in a box is a gift. Right?
Exactly.
And we could name lots of gifts. We could name Tiffany, Cartier, anything.
Right.
Right. That's the only thing that should be in a box. We shouldn't put ourselves in a box. We shouldn't let society put us in a box. So that's the first lesson that I really appreciate that your parents taught you. And the second one is that of color, right? The world is not black and white. It's not this or that. It's this and that and something else and the other. So
exactly.
I love the metaphor that you use, that you should be able to see color, enjoy color, and color outside those lines. So I love the box metaphor and the color metaphor. So good for you. So you had this inspiration from your parents. You had, this sort of unrestricted vision of what you could do for your life. Why did you choose to create a fashion line? You could have gone into modeling because clearly,
well, thank you.
Hello, clearly, I see you.
Well, I dabbled a little bit, but I enjoyed being behind the scenes more than anything. So to be able to create was a God-given talent of mine. And I feel like I inherited that from my father. So it was something that just kind of came natural for me. It wasn't something that I had to work pretty hard at. It was me, right?
Yeah.
So I lost my father when I was 13 years old, which was extremely devastating for me, because I had a great father figure. I had a great man as my father. I had someone that truly taught me how a man is supposed to treat me. Also taught me, how to be confident in myself and not allow people or things to jade my view. So many life lessons was taught in that short period of time in 13 years. So with that being said, I always felt like my father didn't take his talents to the levels that they could have. He was more concerned about trying to provide for his family.
Of course.
So with that being said, there were dreams and aspirations that he put on hold for his family. There were things that, were his personal struggles, that those demons that he had to deal with. Great man, but like all of us, we all have things that are our vices. And he had some vices.
We're human.
What'd you say?
We are human.
Yeah, we are human. Absolutely. So those things, were things that kept him from pursuing his love and passion. He did it to a degree, but he didn't do it to the extent that it could have been done. So at an early age, I decided that I wasn't going to allow that to be my truth. That I had to take on this legacy that he left and take it to the levels that it needed to be on, because this man was so amazing, so talented, so handsome, so debonair, like tall, good looking, always dressed from head to toe, well spoken, like the world needed to see him, and the world still gets to see him and know him through me. So I decided at 13 years old that I was going to see this thing through, that I was going to continue this legacy of creativity, of, amazing confidence and swagger and all of those things. And it became a life journey and purpose for me. I knew that's what I was supposed to do. So I did the things that I needed to do in order to make sure that I would be sitting here today as Pink Lucy.
Wow. What is your father's name?
Willie Nayland Walker.
Shall we dedicate this podcast to Willie Nayland Walker?
Yes, and we have to dedicate it to my mother too. I lost her in 2018.
My God, Tiffany, yeah. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But when I tell you the power and strength that this has given me has just been amazing. It makes me tear up, but just great parents.
Yes, obviously. And continuing to be great in a different way from a different place.
Right.
What is your mother's name?
Betty Jean Walker.
We are dedicating this podcast also to Betty Jean Walker. I know they're proud of you.
Oh, they let me know in my dreams often.
Good. Oh, good. Oh, that's wonderful. I won't get too woo-woo here, but it's wonderful that they communicate with you in your dreams. That's very important.
My mother way more than Dad, because Dad was kind of the one that always sat in the cut and just, watched. But my mother is always letting her presence be known. Okay. Almost every night for the past 3 years.
Okay, so you are being guided.
I am definitely being guided.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry for your losses.
Thank you.
But they have definitely left you some gems, and it's incredible what you've decided to learn from those experiences and to do what you're doing. So tell me about Pink Lucy. Why the name Pink Lucy?
Oh God. So that's a story that has to do with my mother. So pink, of course, is my favorite color because pink is a lifestyle.
That's right.
That I have the blessing to live.
Yes.
And one morning I was getting dressed and I was about to open up my first location. So originally when I started designing, it was under the name Tiffanys. Chemise, the French word for shirt or loosely fit dress,
Yes.
which is just ironically my middle name.
Yes.
Wow. So I just always heard people butcher the name, and I was just like, I don't think it's that marketable. I was like, I think I should change the name, but it had so many memories and history behind it. I started designing clothes, like I said, at 13, and in college, everyone knew me as Tiffanys, and it was just one of those things where I kind of had to make that executive decision to take on a name that I felt that I could really, really brand. So I am getting ready to open up my first location.
Yes.
So I'm like, nah, I can't be called Tiffanys. Nah, can't be called that. So I'm like really thinking hard, like while I'm doing my makeup, I'm like, okay, God, like, what should I name it? Like, oh my, what? So the name Pink Lucy pops up in my head, and I was like, oh my God, that's it. Pink Lucy. Like, that is so marketable. Like, no one can mess up that name, So I called my mother and I'm like, Ma, I always called her Ma. I was like, Ma, what do you think of the name Pink Lucy? And she paused and she was like, there was a sigh. She said, I love it. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, okay, so let me ask you this. Why do you always call my niece? Well, I mean, of course, I didn't ask her why she called my niece. I was like, why do you always call Taylor Lucy?
Yes.
And she was like, well, I do it as a term of endearment because I always thought it was the craziest thing ever. Like, why is my mom calling Lucy Taylor? Like, Taylor and Lucy aren't even remotely close to each other. Nope. So why is she calling her that? But of course, we knew not to question Mom when it came to certain things. So we just went with it,
That's right.
And she was like, well, actually, I use it as a term of endearment. Like the show I Love Lucy. And she was like, because I Love Lucy was always one of my favorite shows growing up. And she was like, and I just love this show. She was like, so I just started calling Taylor Lucy. Like, I love Taylor. I love Lucy. And I was like, oh my God. I never knew that. And I said, well, that's it. That's the name. Pink Lucy. And she was like, I love it. I love it. I love it. And I was like, yeah, because I love the color pink.
Yes.
I love you.
Oh.
And
it fits.
Taylor. So I love Lucy. And that's how the name was born.
Perfect. Great story. It is absolutely fitting. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I had it trademarked. And from that point on, I went as Pink Lucy. Tiffanys. She didn't die. She just kind of retired.
Early retirement is very sexy.
And the fabulous little sister of Tiffanys was born, and she is Pink Lucy.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Well, I have to admit, I obviously went on the site before my, computer sort of crashed on me, and I saw a few things there. I was like, oh, yes. And you have a black number. I don't know if it's a bodysuit or a top, but it has like like ruffles coming out almost.
Yes, I know exactly which one.
I need that in my life.
We'll make sure that happens for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll have Belize to get all your information. So it is made to order, but we'll put it in production for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, for whom do you design? For whom, like, who do you have in mind when you are creating, and why?
You know what? I have the woman who doesn't mind standing out in a crowd. I have her in mind. I have just really always been really big on self-esteem, self-confidence, being comfortable in the skin that you're in. That doesn't mean that we don't want to improve ourselves. Right. It just means that, hey, overall, I'm okay with who I am. Now, there's always room for improvement. I stay on a diet. So, like, I'm constantly like trying to be the best version of me, Of
course.
So I always think about the woman who is really okay with herself. She embraces who she is. And for me, that looked like embracing the body that I have. Like, I'm a female that has a very small, upper torso, and down below the waist, like, I'm very curvy. Yes, I have hips and butt, and I've had it since the 6th grade, and I hated it. It made me feel like the odd man out, But even then, my mother made sure to, speak life into me, to let me know it was okay that I was different than the other girls, and that I shouldn't be ashamed of that.
Right.
So I was taught to embrace my body at a young age. But of course, when you're looking at younger girls who, they're straight up and down, and you're like, and they can wear any and everything, with me, like, if I put on a pair of shorts, it's like, oh my God, like, you really shouldn't be wearing those, because it just did not translate the same on me because of my Coke bottle shape. So with that being said, I always struggled with finding clothes that like fit me correctly, because everything would be so huge in the waist.
Yes.
But when it came to my hips and my butt, it fit. Everything else just didn't fit. So always like trying to wear the latest styles, and like, having to find a belt to put on because nothing fit in the waist. All of those things like really, really made me know that my calling was to not only dress body types like mine, but to dress women so that they felt comfortable in the skin that they're in and what they're wearing, and that they look fabulous, whether they're a size 0 or a size 22. So like I tell people all the time, Pink Lucy is for everybody. Emphasis on body, BODY. I don't care if you're a 0 or a 22 or a 24, whatever you may be. That's just your size. So people will be like, oh, well, do you carry plus size? And my answer is, I carry all sizes.
Good for you.
I just feel that we have so many, boxes that we're put in, just like I talked about earlier, being in this box. Oh, well, you're a size this, so you shouldn't do this. Or, oh, you're this, so you shouldn't do that. All of those things, they trap us.
Yeah.
And it's a mind trap as well. And that's how women lose their confidence. That's how women aren't certain who they are. And guess what? They have children, right? And that same thing is passed along, right? So you got a bunch of women that are not comfortable with who they are. And that's how we get our haters. That's how we get, our trolls that's constantly bashing people on social media. It all stems from the fact that you don't love yourself enough. And a lot of times that's a learned behavior. It was learned. And, it's very important to unlearn that and become comfortable in the skin that you're in. Now, it took me a while to embrace this lovely body of mine. But at the same time, it didn't make me love me any less, right? I realized that there was a niche that I needed to fulfill. Just because a woman has a small waist and a big rear end does not mean that she's necessarily plus size.
That's true. I agree.
Doesn't mean that. That's just the way that she's shaped. Yeah. But for so long, we were given these standards that, okay, a size 2, this is the measurements, the size 4. None of that accommodates for the fact that this woman may have a really small waist and a large rear end, that goes back to the fabrications that are used. Right. It goes back to the cut, right. It needs to be slimmer in the waist and have a little bit more room in the hips. Like when it lays down on the table, you should be able to see that curvature, And I quickly realized that was my purpose.
Yeah. That's pretty incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And I'm glad I got I created a good title for this podcast, because not even knowing your full story yet, right? Aligning pink with power and purpose. It's fantastic. So
thank you.
I commend you on what you are doing, especially communicating through clothing, because we all know fashion communicates.
Absolutely. That is my canvas.
Right? So if your fashion communicates something, would you say that the message that you want your clothes to convey is for women to be confident and to love themselves? Is that the simple message?
Absolutely. My clothing is more than just what you put on your body, because we have to wear clothes.
Yeah.
My clothing is a statement maker. It has a signature. Yeah. People always say, I can always tell when it's something of yours. I can tell when it's Pink Lucy. I've had people to inbox me like, wait, is this one of your dresses? Like, yeah, like, or hey, I saw this girl at such and such, and she had on this dress, and it had this like shoulder detail, and like it she was so snatched in it, and I just knew that was your dress. And I asked her, and she was like, yeah, it's Pink Lucy.
Wow.
That is the most fulfilling thing ever for me as a designer, that people know my work without looking at the tag. That's the biggest accomplishment ever as a designer. So, to have the ability to create in a manner that you have a signature that people actually can recognize is just amazing.
I know now, because that black tulle thing that I was talking about, that she was like the phoenix rising in that getup. I was like, okay. Now let's talk about sort of the business aspect a little bit. And related to that, my first question is, describe your creative process. Like, what is it that you see or you feel that makes you think, oh, I'm going to make a pattern and I'm going to create that dress or that top or those pants? Describe your creative process for me.
My creative process, I am very much inspired by color, by prints, and by shape. So I love creating things that have volume, where it's fitted, but it has this, shoulder piece, or it has some structure to it, because I just think it just makes the clothing so much more interesting. I play around with a lot of color. I play around with a lot of prints. I, of course, play around with structure. Yeah. Fit is very important to me as well. Again, I don't care if you're a 2 or a 22, fit is so important. Yes. So for me, I am definitely inspired by people watching.
Yeah.
So streetwear.
Yeah.
I a lot of times like will just get fabric that I really like and play around with it, and then I let the fabric tell me what it wants to do.
Wow.
So I do a lot of draping. I drape a lot of things. So just kind of playing around with it is what my creative process is. Of course, I sketch, and I sketch exceptionally well because art was my first love.
Yes.
I was originally a graphic design major in college, and then I switched to fashion because I was like, okay, I got this fashion thing down pat, but I need to be able to, have a great life for myself as I pursue my dreams. So I knew that graphic design was something that could be really lucrative. So that was my thought process. And then finally I said, you know what? I'm going to learn the business of fashion.
Yes.
And that's when I switched my major to fashion merchandising and marketing, because my mother and I had a pact that I could pursue fashion as long as I understood that I could not go to art school. She was like, I need you to have something else that, can back you. You got to have a backup plan, Yeah. So she wouldn't let me go to art school, but she was like, you go to a 4-year college, I will support you in any way that I can. Once you graduate, you can take this on full throttle. That was the agreement.
Okay.
So with that being said, I decided, okay, well, I'm not going to major per se in fashion design, but I will major in fashion merchandising and marketing. So I actually have a degree in fashion, merchandising, and marketing with a minor in art because of all the graphic design classes I took.
Yes. I mean, all of it.
Yes, of course, I took fashion classes, design classes as well. Yeah. But it was truly a blessing to really learn the business of fashion, which has helped me tremendously.
I can only imagine, and I'm sure it has. But despite taking, those classes and despite majoring in merchandising and knowing the business aspects of your craft, was it still challenging to be a woman entering into the business of fashion?
Not necessarily being a woman, but being a Black woman.
I was just going to say the part two of that was how about being a Black woman? Yeah.
So oddly enough, when I entered the graphic design program at Louisiana Tech University, I originally went to Southern University, Baton Rouge, because I had to go to HBCU.
Okay.
But I realized that I was just having too much of a good time.
A little too much fun.
Yeah. And even though I was like juggling it all, like the porting and my grades, I just knew that if I really was serious about what I wanted to do, then I needed to be somewhere where I could focus more. So I actually
How responsible of you.
Right. I left Southern on my own. My mother did not force me to. She came home from work and I was like, yeah, so I decided to transfer. I already did all the paperwork. And she was like, what? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, it's just what I need to do. So I've always been very focused.
Yes.
So with that being said, when I entered the graphic design program at Louisiana Tech, here I am on campus. I'm excited. They had one of the best programs ever. I go to meet with the dean of the college, and I walk in. He says, "You're Tiffany Walker?" White man, older white man. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Yes, sir." Now I have the all-American white girl name. Okay. So he's like, "You're Tiffany?" "Yes, sir." He looks at me, he looks down at his desk, he looks back up, and he said, He said, well, I'm going to tell you this right now. You already have 2 strikes against you.
Whoa.
He said, not only are you a female, but you're Black. Good luck. This man actually said this.
Whoa. And listen, he was pointing out reality. Okay.
He was definitely pointing out reality, but what I did not know is that he was also my professor.
Ooh, Ooh, conflict of interest to say the least.
Yes. And when I tell you, this man did everything in his power, like he would like call me out in class. Like he would do so many things to make me feel uncomfortable. And our final for the class was an ad campaign about organ donation. Okay. So I was like, you know, I've always been very imaginative and really creative, of course. So I was like, oh, okay. So the Grim Reaper, let's see, standing in a cemetery, and like, you know, there's a casket and the person's laying in a casket. And then I created the campaign, and like the tagline was, "You can't take them with you." It was genius to me. You know, all the other classmates was like, that's dope. A bunch of men now, because I'm really the only, you know, woman that is that's in these graphic design classes. And that man failed me. He failed me.
Whoa.
And I was crushed. I have never cried the way I cried when I failed at class. And I went to my dorm room after I found out, and I called my mom, and I was like, can't believe he failed me. Like, I've never made an F, and I'm just going on and on and on. And she didn't know what to say. Like, what do you say? You know, like, what do you do? And I heard about the fashion design program, the fashion merchandising program at Tech. So I walked across campus to human ecology, and with tears in my eyes, I met a lady named Dr. Linda Sybils, and she said, you wasn't supposed to be there anyway. This is where you're supposed to be. Wow. And she was like, and I hate to tell you this, but they do this to weed certain people out, because the program is so competitive. You know, there are so many people that want to get into this graphic design program at Tech, and there's not that many spots. So she was like, unfortunately, you were weeded out. She was like, but you have a home here. And when I tell you that woman supported me to no end, like I was like the star student, you know, like she would go over and beyond for me, because she knew I was serious about what I wanted to do. My first fashion show that I ever had, she was there and brought all of the professors from the human ecology program at Tech.
That's amazing.
And she always served as a mentor for me. And I owe a great deal of my success to Dr. Linda Sybils.
Yes. And I have to say, in a twisted kind of way, because this is how sometimes I rationalize, you know, sort of the drama and trauma that I've been through throughout my training in plastic surgery. Because let me tell you, there was a lot of it similar.
Oh, wow.
But similar stories to you know, the denigration, the you're not good enough, the, you know, you suck, you know, I'm going to fail you, all that stuff. When you know that you're so much better than that. So in a twisted kind of way, you kind of have to be grateful to your hater. Because had it not been for that dean and professor, you may not have found Dr. Sybil.
And I completely agree. And, you know, the odd thing of it is this man told me basically that I could never be a graphic designer. However, I do a lot of the graphics for my company.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So like I've been saying for years that I need to send him a thank you note, and I really do. And I need to let him know that, you know, even though you tried to make it so difficult for me, this is who I am today. And yeah, I'm quite a success because of you.
Yes. I would have way too many thank you notes to write, so I don't bother. No. But yes, you do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. You are so full of amazing stories. Now,
thank you.
Is that where you learned how to run your business, through the fashion merchandising program and through the mentorship with Dr. Sybil? Is that
and a whole bunch of mistakes?
Yes.
That's how I learned. You know, a lot of financial mistakes. Just you know, basically overextending myself sometimes. My mother's death taught me how to say no.
Yeah.
I finally learned that in 2018 is how to say no to people, because I always wanted to go over and beyond. I've always been an overachiever, almost a perfectionist to a sense. But that was something that I definitely struggled with was, like, oh yeah, I can do it. I can do anything. I can do this. I can do that. And it becomes too much. It becomes, it crushes you. It's like you don't have the bandwidth to be all the things that you need to be to everyone, plus be there for your business. That's a hard thing to do,
Yes.
So finally I found the ability to say no.
Yeah.
And that was powerful. I just say it with so much ease now. No.
No. With a smile.
No. And I don't have to explain it either. The answer is just no.
Oh my gosh. That's another thing that I relate to you with, because I think many women are conflicted, and many women feel the pressure of having to be there for everyone, be everything and every woman to everyone. And sometimes we forget ourselves and forget what it is that we truly, want to do, and forget our focus. So that you learn that early, and you learn to be able to say no with grace and gratitude is really important. And I still struggle with it. Right. And I wouldn't call myself a yes woman, because I very happily say no to things. But sometimes it's just like, oh, okay, let me just do this for this person. Or,
because of the relationship, because of what someone may have done for you before, and you feel obligated. And and sometimes because of that, we just overextend ourselves.
Yes. So no to that.
No.
Now let's shift a little bit back to less business in a way, or different kind of business.
Okay.
How do you define style?
Oh, style is a personal choice. So whatever your style may be, it's the flair that you add to something that we just consider as clothes. It's the way that you wear it. Yes. It's the it factor that you put to it, whether you put an it factor to it or you don't, we can take things that I may wear and someone else may wear, and it can be the same garments, but they're worn in a different way. So style to me is a personal signature.
Perfect. Now, how would you define being fashionable? Are being fashionable and stylish the same?
I don't think so.
Why?
See, I can be stylish and I go to Goodwill.
True. Style doesn't have a choice.
Be fashionable and just put on a bunch of labels, and because it's trending, then it's fashion. So I think style is putting the stank on it, so to speak. And making it your own. Versus fashion is whatever, Vogue or, whatever publication or social media is saying that you need to be rocking, So I do not feel like they're the same at all.
Okay, I got you. And you touched upon this a little earlier, and I want to get back to it now regarding everyone's, calling it body positivity. But I actually interviewed a woman on a podcast who sort of shifted the framework for me and said it's actually, it's body neutrality. So how has the body neutrality movement, so to speak, affected your creative process? Or was this something that you had always been doing, creating for everybody?
I was doing that before it was a thing.
Yeah.
When you are the person that body isn't the norm, not a fat girl, not a skinny girl, it makes you see it a little differently, like you see it from a different lens. So for me, body neutrality, like that's been a thing for me, so I love seeing the fact that people are embracing, more body types than they were before. But at the same time, that should have happened a long time ago before it was a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. You've been listening to part 1 of the Forever F.A.B podcast with my fabulous guest, Tiffany Walker. Stay tuned for part 2.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Forever F.A.B, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty, curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD. Live beautifully and help make the world a more beautiful place.